I'm excited about what happened in the last election. Guess what? We have no splash tax. 3-1. The people turned it down. Wow. That's a voluntary tax. I like voluntaries, don't you? I don't want to have to pay it if I don't want to. But guess what we did? We said to government, they put it out there for us to choose for, and that's the problem, is that we, the people, have forgotten how to make changes. We just kind of sit back in our lazy boys with our remote control and whatever drink and beverage we have for choice and turn the channels and watch the football games. And we wonder why things have happened and what's gone on. You know, it reminds me of a story. A fellow was watching his wife getting ready for Thanksgiving, and she was cutting the end of a ham off. And said, honey, why are you cutting the end of the ham off? She says, I don't know. My mama always cut the end of the ham off. He says, well, let's call Mama and ask that. So we got on the phone and called her and said, why did you cut the end of the ham off? She says, I don't know. My mama always cut the end of the ham off. He says, we're going to solve this 2-generation mystery. We're going to call great-grandmother and see what she said. Call her and say, grandmother, why did you cut the end of the ham off? She says, because my roaster was too small. Now, understanding this, some of the things that we do simply because we didn't know any different. And that's part of what you're doing. We're seeing that government has pretty much been given over to the parties. It's been given over to the Democrats. It's been given over to the Republicans. And we, the people, kind of sit there and say, what do? We vote for the candidate that they want us to vote for. And therefore, it is necessary for us to become involved. And that's what we saw in this whole last election. There was a movement that has not been there for a while. And we've got to continue that from that standpoint. Health care for just a few minutes. I want you to understand this. Now, here's the background that I'll give you. I've come from 30 years in the insurance business, so I've dealt with health care on the side. Let me say this first of all. After 30 years of dealing with it, there's a lot to it that people don't know. First of all, we've got the government. Second of all, we've got the insurance companies. Thirdly, we've got the consumer. Fourthly, we've got the hospitals, the providers, and the doctors. Okay, so there's enough blame to blame everybody, okay? The insurance companies you can blame. The individuals you can blame. You can blame the doctors. And what I want to do is talk to you, because what we're talking about is this. We are talking about the government taking over your health care, making the decisions for you, and choosing what happens. And you can go on the internet and find a lot of the things, but I mean from this, who should be able to get treatment? And what I want to do is I want to walk through some things with you, because if you read this bill, which I think we need to at least read the highlights of it. Our congressmen even say they don't read it. Somebody better be reading. Short enough, the first thing is tax equality. Now you say, what's tax equality got to do with it? Every time you spend $1, you have to calculate into that dollar, what's the tax? Now let me give you this. If you work for a corporation, let's say you're the CEO of that corporation, and that corporation pays for your health care. How much tax do you pay on it? Anybody? Out of the class. Okay, government, tax, y'all got this. How much does the CEO of a corporation, and the corporation pays his premium for him, how much does he pay in tax? Zero. Okay? Zero. He doesn't have to pay any income tax on it. Now, is that efficient dollars for him? Yeah, it is. But now, let's take an employee. Let's say your employer pays 50% of your premiums. Okay? He pays for that, and he gets a write-off for that as a business expense. But you have to pay the other 50%. Now, without some modifications, and I'll mention the modification afterwards, if you're paying the other 50%, so let's say it's $600 and you have $300, you have to pay FICA tax on that. That's 7.65. You have to pay state income tax, and you have to pay federal tax on it. Now, that means that you, the worker, have to pay. That's not tax equality. That's not a fair tax. And I'm not making a pun upon it, but it's not a fair tax. Because you're punishing the worker and rewarding the corporate guy. Now, they get him in other ways, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Do y'all understand just the mathematics of what's going on? So the government's getting that every time you're paying for the health care. Now, you can solve that problem with what's called a Section 125. Okay? And I'm going to use some things, terminologies, things like that. And all that is you agree to pre-tax and let your employer reduce your payroll by the amount of your premium. And if you don't have that at your employer, you ought to ask them about it. Because guess what? You save money and your employer saves money as well. Those are creative ways, because here's the thing about it. When I spend $1, if I don't have to pay the government, is that a good thing? Everybody, yes, that's a good thing. Yeah, I want to make sure y'all get that right, okay? For the individual, he has to pay his premium. And he has to pay it personally. He's got some issues. He's got an adjusted gross income calculation of 7.65. He has to follow a law form. It's wrong. You should not punish individuals. You should make, in my opinion, all health care premiums tax deductible and non-taxed, and turn it back to us rather than pay the government. We're going to talk about what's going on. We need to do this. We need to allow access to our retirement accounts, our 401ks, our IRAs that we have money in, and be able to access them without penalty, okay, and without tax. Here's what that allows us to do. If I've got money, $50,000 in my IRA or my retirement account, and I want to buy a $10,000 deductible health care plan to drive my premiums down, I don't have to worry, because if I need the money, where can I go get it? I can go over for a medical emergency, and I've got to reach in, and I can do that. And I can lower my taxes that way, and my premiums that way. But here's the part. If you take the money out, premium 59.5, you've got issues. You've got taxes and penalties. We've got ways to fix the current system. Now, granted, the system's got problems, but the other issues that we are dealing with is that the government has handcuffed us with what's going on. In Georgia is one of 14 states, it has a premium tax of 4.5%, I believe it is 4.5, 4.75, is that for every dollar you spend, so if you get a bill and it's health care, there's a 4.5% embedded tax in there on top of, if you're paying for it, the Social Security, the FICA tax and the state tax and the federal tax. It's just a tax you don't see. You all understand that? Also understand this, insurance in general. There's a premium tax on everything, even though it's not on the state. One of the things I would push for is this. On every single tax we pay, it should be obvious on the bill that there's a tax there so that you understand where your money is. They're robbers, and they rob you, and you never know you've been mugged. You just got mugged. We need to offer incentives to this. We need to take incentives to insurance companies and to healthcare providers if they can come up with ways to save money, that there's a benefit to them from a tax standpoint. We need to take a carrot, not a stick, to beat them with. Okay? We need to look for the creative side of America.